Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. As usual, I'm your host, Victor, and we are here to discuss, usually, a TV show we're watching week to week. We just wrapped up coverage of Paradise. If you've caught up on that or are catching up on that, make sure to check our backlog for those episodes. We're also continuing to cover Severance, which is a couple more weeks to go on that one. And of course, we're here today to discuss the fourth episode of The White Lotus called Hide or Seek. Hide or Seek, Sona. Sona is here with me again, my co-host.
Hi.
And a couple of other things you may want to check out in our backlog. Anora, of course, just won Best Picture and was re-released in theaters this weekend. I didn't realize, and actually was back in the top 10 and had a even bigger spike in box office around the world. And people have been downloading our Anora episode. So if you have recently watched that film, then check out our coverage of it here in the podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation with me and my sister, actually. Sona was not there for that one. And a reminder that Anora is premiering on Hulu, Disney, whatever option you happen to have, I believe this very week. So if you've been wanting to see it, it will be readily available very soon. A couple of notes here, house cleaning notes. First of all, for the past month or so, I've been asking everybody, can we get to 100 subscribers on YouTube? And we are, as of this morning, we may even be higher than this, but I'm recording this on Monday, no longer morning. I guess it's afternoon now. And I think we're still stuck at 98, but we got a little jump over the weekend. So 98.
So close.
So close. So the reason I mention this is if you're hearing this, we may have already exceeded 100. So if you are definitely 100, or if you are even in the ballpark of 100, I'll keep this open until we hit like 110, let's say, which I doubt we will this week. If you think you are number 100 or very close to it, then an extra challenge to you just to get us over the threshold. Put in your comments, I'm 100 or 100 exclamation point or yoo-hoo, woohoo, 100, whatever you prefer. And I will read whatever you post on there, and I'll do it in a video. I'll do a video recording of me reading whatever is there, unless it is
offensive.
Yeah, intentionally offensive or overtly racist or something like that. But
I consider that offensive, but okay.
Yes, yes,
I don't know why those would be two discrete categories for you. But
maybe racist and yet unoffensive. I don't know if that's possible, but if it's not completely beyond the pale,
racist. Yet I see the point.
If you just wanted to hear me say something very silly, or you want to say something kind, or you want me to shout you out specifically, just any comment you put in there with that 100 hashtag, or just once again, just call out 100 in some way. That'll get us over the threshold. I'm certain, even if just two of you do it, actually. But I will respond to anybody who does that up until, if we get to 150, that would be fantastic, by the way, but I probably won't shout at everybody.
I love this idea. I think it's great. And I also would like to just jump in to say I'm continuing to love the comments that we're getting.
Yes.
On the YouTube format. And I want to recognize that somebody made a comment about my voice sounding like Nicole Wallace, who I wasn't previously familiar with. And I am choosing to take that as a compliment. It wasn't entirely clear to me, but given prior comments that have been made about my voice, I think we are moving in the right direction. And so thank you to that person for that comment.
You are self-selecting, Sona. The people who don't like your voice are dropping off.
That's right.
And the fans are showing up.
Well, I mean, I can't count out that this was meant as a criticism, but I'm not going to take it that way.
I do not think so. From the tone, it did not seem to be the case. But a lot of feedback on YouTube. I guess YouTube just seems to be the type of platform that has more feedback. We're getting a lot of feedback there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I love it.
For your comments. Another thing specific to the White Lotus that I wanted to shout out is completely unknown to me. Somehow just missed the boat on this completely. The actress who plays Mook on the series, Lalisa Manobal, is a Thai actress, or not actress, actually, not until this point. She is the rapper from the K-pop band Blackpink, who one of the other members of that, of course, has the number one song in the world right now with that APT with Bruno Mars, which my daughter plays on loop constantly. But Lalisa has been, or Lisa, as she calls herself as a solo artist, has been a solo artist for even longer now, I think for a couple of years. And she even performed at the Oscars during that James Bond tribute this year. She was, of course, very styled out there. I watched that performance and did not make the connection. But then, of course, immediately afterwards, reading some of the Oscar coverage, they go, Lisa, who is currently acting in the White Lotus. I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss this? But apparently I did. She gave them, I mean, honestly, that James Bond tribute was pretty rough, but she was not the worst part of it. She was not the problematic part of it. So not on her for that.
Well, there's a lot of pop culture to keep up with these
Too
days.
much.
So I'll add in also,
Yeah.
I might have mentioned this to you. Banana Republic has a White Lotus collection
yes.
right now.
Yeah.
So there's another way that White Lotus expands into the rest of the world.
You had mentioned to me in that same conversation that they should have one for Severance as well. I'm not sure Severance has that
Grim.
variety of costumes considering the
It would be very grim.
well, I mean, except for the snow costumes, which would be fantastic, of course.
Yeah, the Ortbo thing has some opportunities for winter wear.
And you also showed me that there was a post in your neck of the woods out there in New York, the Upper East Side moms.
That's right.
Requesting some help with a Severance themed bridal party, wasn't it?
It was a Severance themed bridal shower, and
Yes.
somebody was looking for a punch bowl, which I can only speculate means there will be pineapple bobbing. But I'm dying to get an invite to this shower. What could a Severance themed bridal shower be like?
You have to crash it. You have to.
I mean, maybe does everyone take on a whole new inside version of themselves when they enter the bridal shower?
Did they all dress? I mean, you have only one female character who's on all the time. Do they all have to wear that same blue dress?
That color is great on Helly. I understand why she's wedded to it. She looks great in it.
With the hair color too, right? Definitely.
Yeah, so striking.
Okay, we could talk more about that in our Severance coverage, which of course continues in the feed as well. Oh, and later this week, just one more reminder that Darren and I will be discussing probably Reacher up until this point, and also the Mickey 17, the new film that just premiered this week, was #1 at the box office, although kind of disappointing. But more importantly, we will start having week-to-week coverage on Dope Thief, the new Apple TV crime thriller comedy, maybe, crime thriller set in right outside Philadelphia. It's relatively close by. And considering this podcast started off with a crime thriller set in that general vicinity when we were covering Mayor of Easttown, a little bit of a revisit to that. So stay tuned for that. We'll be covering it starting next week. All right, Sona. So Hide or Seek. What do you think about the title here?
Well, I think it goes back to, I'm not going to say it correctly. I'm going to fracture it. That quote about Thailand that was in the previews for this week, and then we saw in the episode about why people come to Thailand, right? They're either
that you're either here to running away from something or searching for something. And then I think it was Greg who dresses to Timothy. So are you hiding or seeking? Putting a fine point on it, which I thought was a great bit of dialogue for sure.
And then there's a little bit more of a literal reference with the water guns as well, I suppose.
Yeah, perhaps. What was your general impression of this episode versus the season up to this point? What do you think it does in general with the character development? How did you feel?
As you know, and as I've mentioned, my favorite thing is watching people talk to each other in a television show or movie. So I am getting what I want. I'm not sure that other people are getting what they want. This whole boat episode, I thought the preview was fantastic for it. And I do think there was plot development and things happened. I think I was expecting something a little more exciting to happen than what we saw. For me, though, I'm still happy with the forward motion and the developments we saw. I think in comparison to last season, at around this time, even though I know it wasn't the same amount of episodes, there was kind of like a foreboding feeling and the tension being jacked up. And I think we have that here, but not at the same level of intensity. What is your feeling?
I have many mixed feelings for it, and I ended up liking it, but I was on a journey to get there. Partially because I am a little disappointed with the structuring of this episode versus season 2, which I still think is kind of a masterpiece now.
So great.
Especially in retrospect, and just how vested I was in everybody's stories there, and how jumping from one storyline to another, especially this deep into the show, it was like, oh, it's so bad we're cutting away from those people. I really want to know what's going on with that, the two couples and their sexual pairing off.
Love
And then
them.
we jump into the Italian, the three generations of Italian men. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, wait, I love to see what they're, and it was just jumping
Right.
from one to the other. It was like from one strength to the other. And I do not have that at all in this show. Although I still am very interested in it in general. And that's why I was kind of on a journey. I have to let go of the fact that it's not going to feel like season two,
Right.
which I
And
think was an
season two
expectation.
didn't feel like season one, right? In
Exactly.
the
Yes.
defense
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah. And I think it's all intentional. And I think I have to come around to that because what I'm starting to feel now is that simultaneously, just like you just described, I was disappointed that we didn't have more action in this one. But then you see the preview for next episode. Every episode, the previous day leaks into the next episode instead of being this clean break. And we saw
Mm-hmm.
before where it was just like a minute of the previous day, and now it's more and more. Now, this seems to be the entire night is going to, it feels like from the coming
Interesting point.
attractions, that almost the entirety of next episode is actually a continuation of this night. So this all feels like setting up what is going to be what we kind of anticipated in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very looking forward to next week. And as I was thinking about this, I started thinking that maybe this season, more than the previous ones, maybe this is a thriller. And we're like kind of laying the groundwork. And now it's as if we have multiple thriller plots that are all starting to come to a head in the second half of the season. And once again, I think I'm coming around to that, and that maybe that's what Mike White is basically maybe trying to write a thriller in this season in the way that maybe that isn't what he was trying to do in previous seasons.
Like a slow burn,
Exactly. Yeah, that there's
but a
going to be
very slow burn.
a very slow burn. Yeah, for sure.
Like maybe right now we're still lighting the match.
Well, I mean, the next episode, I mean, it really does feel like this is the fulcrum, right? Everything that is been on the boiler, on the back burner up until this point is going to.
And we got the Chekhov's gun this episode. We'll get to that. So
yeah, I very much felt like when the gun is introduced and the music and everything, I'm like, this is the gun. I know that, pretty clear that that is the case, because there's probably going to be potentially other people may have a gun, but this is the gun, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't want to think about just this show in the sense of the title here, but also maybe what the show is trying to say thematically about these resorts and about the people who attend these resorts and these experiences and the whole idea of hiding and seeking. I didn't really think about it until now, but you think about going to a resort, you're unwinding, it's a vacation, you get to like leave your life behind. But when you think now on 3 seasons of the show, are any of these characters able to escape the things they're trying to hide from? Like they use the hide and seek metaphor here. It seems like everything gets worse for these people as far as our experiences, right?
Wherever you go, there you are.
Right. And maybe that's one of my criticisms of this season. I feel like we have a lot of hiding and not so much seeking so far, just to kind of put it in that framing. I thought about season 1. We have Fred Heckinger's character, Quinn Mossbacher, who ends up discovering that he wants to just kind of canoe with these guys. He seems to be the seeker in that regard. And it is one of the few characters in season 1 the show seems to let off the hook. I'm not sure what kind of career path that puts him on, but at least it was someone who seemed to come to some kind of additional revelation about himself. And then I think about Isabella in season 2, the pianist who she discovers things about herself and about the kind of ambitions she may have. And she seems to be bettered by the experience of season 2. I don't know if you agree with that. Definitely feel free to disagree with that. But beyond that, I was thinking, so who would that possibly be in this season? Because you think about all these people who are mostly hiding explicitly. Belinda seems to be someone who is perhaps a seeker here, and maybe the seeker here. Piper?
Well, Piper, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think on the page she seems to be, but I'm skeptical. We'll see how that all plays out. And then I was thinking about Guy Talk as well, who is kind of trying to change who he is. But now I do wonder about some of the events this week and whether that is not, if things are not really going to work out well for him at this point.
I feel like maybe he needs a different career.
Yes, he's not good at this.
Yeah. Yeah, Piper seems like maybe she's looking for an eat, pray, love situation. I don't know.
Right. It feels like too facile what she's trying to do. And maybe it's just because they haven't defined her that well. And maybe she will become a more interesting character in the back half of the season. But for now, she seems to be a poser as presented here.
Well, we haven't seen much of her in her defense or in criticism of the writing. I'm not sure. I know I did see her doing yoga, so she's got that.
There you go. She did actually try to make an appointment last week.
Yeah.
So that's a step in the right direction.
This was the subject of her studies. So she did invest some time, but that's what we've been told and not seen. So not really sure if it's something that we are to draw conclusions about her regarding, or it's a failure to flesh out the character. Unclear.
Yeah, it could all be intentional, right? By not showing too much of his hand, Mike, the writer, Mike White, he's allowing us to have our own impressions of her. Maybe some people look at her and says, she's a seeker. I know that type of person. Maybe some people look at her and cynically say, she's just a Westerner who's, this is just a fashion she's trying on. So maybe he's allowing us to have our own bias, and then he'll develop her in some way that might surprise us. But of all the characters here, I actually start to like some of the Ratliff characters finally at this point in the show.
Well, they have still backed away a little bit from the incest. I mean, it may return, but I think it makes it easier when that's not in your face.
Right. Although we have Dad accidentally flashing the family today. So that was like, that's another.
Oh my gosh. I gasped. But
that also made me think about the first season again with like the seeing too much of the dad. So maybe another parallel.
White Lotus does not shy away from full frontal male nudity, right? Because in season 2 as well.
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. I just remembered.
The Theo James character, right? It's almost like a quota that they've got to hit once every season. So check it off the list. To go back to the Piper thing, what would have been a nice bit of character development if she is really committed to this? If we saw her speaking a little bit of Thai here and there would be nice.
Yeah, I think that if I had to guess the direction we're going in here, this is a fashion she's jumping onto. It doesn't seem as sincere as it could be. But yeah, I still don't. She is the one character specifically this week that I feel like I don't know almost anything about.
Agree. She looked very pretty this week. I can add that.
Yes, I have to say that she has, in some way, she's drawn my eye more and more. Maybe she just gets more camera time. But I think about when she was in the hammock and I really looked at her face, and then definitely looked at her face here when she was talking to her dad on the boat. They have a scene together. So I'm noticing her more and I'm like, oh, she's an appealing actress. And I hadn't really even thought about her much when I'm doing these recaps. So maybe they're bringing her a little more to the fore here. Another topic completely, a statement that Chelsea says, are we ever going to have fun again? And you have Jacqueline saying that we want to have fun, So multiple characters here are saying they want to have fun. They want to have fun. My question to you, Sona, before we get into like more granular breakdown, who is having fun here? Really?
Well, Saxon always makes sure that he's in a position where he can at least pretend to be having fun.
Yes, I agree.
And I think Lachlan did start to have fun in this episode.
I do want to talk about them on the boat. I think that is really good character development on the boat.
Really the two great. Of them. Yes. Chloe is having fun.
You know what? I don't think about Chloe enough on this show. She is doing her thing.
She's living her best life.
Yep.
She's got her pretty pink outfit on this yacht.
She looks great, by the way, in that pink outfit. Even with the weird cutouts.
I actually don't think it's her color, but I can't say, I can't criticize how good she looks. She looks fantastic. I just think it could be a more flattering color. I mean, she's convinced her weirdo boyfriend to give her the yacht while she gets to leave him behind because he's a downer. So she is living her best life.
He's a total downer, and she somehow makes it work. I admire her because we've seen multiple seasons of the show now where he's just the worst person to hang out with. And it does not seem to be bothering her at all. So maybe they're the perfect match.
Yeah, unfazed.
So let's just start off with Belinda's conversation to her son, which I think is so sweet. It's this beautiful scene of her talking to her son on the phone, awaiting his arrival. I guess he's just a day away from arriving. We may not see him next week, I would think, because that might be still the night.
It takes a day to get there, yeah.
But it's also the night of. So I think that in the context of the show, so we may not actually see him until the 6th episode of this show, which will be very close to the end, obviously. I think Belinda is the purest character, or one of the purest characters here. these people very much are different when they're alone versus when we see them in their social dynamic. Belinda is one of the few characters that seems to have continuity between her public self and her private self. And there's a couple other characters, but I do think that that's really interesting. As a counterpoint, for example, you see how she is with her son there on the phone. She still needs to get someone to investigate that sound, by the way. Why hasn't she called somebody?
Yeah, I was wondering too, and we just picked up without any further explanation.
And then she hears something else this week and she's just like, oh, okay, well, I'm going back to work. It's like, wait a second, call maintenance, do something. But then also we have another scene early on in the episode where we see Kate is alone, right? And she hears a continuation of last week, right? She hears her friends talking badly about her as she's out in that patio. They're like on the same sight line of each other. Not the right time to be bad mouthing your friend, by the way.
Yeah.
But what do you think about seeing that character alone in that moment, supposedly bonding with her friends, and then getting home and seeing them talking behind her back? And of course, you can lump in here if you wanted to bring in another correlation. Jacqueline, of course, who's just having this blast talking to her friend. She's desperately trying to contact her supposedly ideal, hot body, young actor husband, and she's the most famous she's ever been in her career, and she can't get him on the phone, and obviously incredibly insecure about that relationship and about her age in general.
Well, what I liked about it is that Jacqueline admitted to her friends
Yes,
that
she did. It's true.
the husband has gone AWOL, I think is how she put it,
Right.
because I think there is some question about how genuine the friendship is between these women. To me, I believe it is a genuine friendship with just some catty dynamics to it. But I think they do love each other and have probably been through a lot together and supported each other through a lot. And so I liked this because it supported that assumption that I had in my head. Although they can be catty and gossipy, they also are real friends who do share hard things with each other sometimes. Although, we've talked in the past about how I think it was Jacqueline didn't know about the problems that Lori was having with her daughter or something like that. But, that can be explained by space and time sometimes, right? You just fall out of touch with people for a little bit. So I enjoy these three ladies. I enjoy this dynamic. I somewhat identify with the dynamic. I like seeing them, and I like seeing where their story goes. Although I don't think that their story is going to take a terribly dark turn, but who knows?
No, I agree. I don't think it's going to be the most cataclysmic, but I am still curious to know just from what the intentions of these three characters are beyond just showing these women in their midlife and dealing with it in different ways with different levels of success, etc. I have them as the three non-blondes in my notes.
I like it that you're clever in your notes to yourself. That's cute.
Yes. I had them as girls. I had them as ladies. I'm like, I don't know if that's derogatory. And I said the blondes. I'm like, how about non-blondes? Just to make another 90s reference. I think you made a really good point. Jacqueline is honest with her friends because you do think about some of the other times when people are alone. And I do think about that especially in this season of the show. Most of the people here, when they are alone, are desperately lonely. And you can say that about almost all these characters when we've seen them one-on-one. And some of these characters we have never seen alone. Like we have never seen Saxon on his own. It's like he's incapable of being alone, which might say something as well.
Interesting point.
Your point is really a real valid one that Jacqueline does tell her friends, as opposed to, for example, when you see Lori break down in episode 1, she obviously has a lot of issues with her divorce, with her daughter, whatever these things are. We don't even know what they are because we just see her crying alone in her room. She never brings up whatever that is. She's never talked about her personal life at all with her friends beyond that point. And Jacqueline does almost directly address her friends with her deepest, darkest fears, not only of her husband, but later on when she's in this hellish experience of being surrounded by retirees, and she cannot tolerate the fact that she's being lumped in with old people.
Yes. And to share that about her husband after bragging about how great their marriage is, right?
Yes,
too. That's
it's a very honest,
even more vulnerable.
A couple of points on them before we move on to other ones. First of all, what do you think about Valentin sending them to the granny resorts. Do you think that that was intentional? Was he taking a dig at them? Or do you think it was just purely like, oh, you want a different pool? They have a nice big pool. Oh, you want alcoholic drinks? They have alcoholic drinks. Do you think he was being totally pragmatic in this selection, or do you think he had an agenda?
I feel like it was mostly thoughtless. I think the next plan he makes is more calculated, but I don't think
Yes.
this plan was terribly calculated. I think it was just like, all right, you want to go somewhere else? Here's someplace else to go. Do you feel like it was part of a bigger scheme?
I thought about, is it possible that it was all a way to get him off the resort because they would like as if he was so Machiavellian that he could like figure out that they're going to come back and want me to be their escort. Uh,
Right, exactly. That seems
he doesn't seem like he thought it out that much, although it might get
right.
more, there could be more to it by the time we get to the end. But I think it was still on the fly. I do think that he was literally just being like, well, there's another pool nearby. You can
Right.
get there really easily. And they serve alcoholic drinks. And that was it. He didn't assume that she's immediately going to be surrounded by these older people and think, oh my God, he thinks I'm low class. He thinks I'm an
Right.
idiot tourist and that I'm an old lady. And that, of course, that is being an old lady is her biggest fear, apparently.
Okay, someone in the service industry wouldn't, or hospitality industry rather, wouldn't want to leave that kind of impression, especially at such a high-end resort. I think they wouldn't want to say, like, here's what I really think of you, is that
You
you
want that
belong with
tip,
these
if nothing
people.
else, right? You want a big
Right.
tip, right?
So,
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's very hard to read this character at all right now because he's so straight faced. But potentially these two bros that show up by the end, I was wondering, are these potentially suspects of who the robbers were? Because if he was in cahoots with them, there were two of them. I had maybe questions about some of this to be if there is something more going on here. But the other thing that made me think that maybe he is messing with them a little bit is him being like, oh, you should go into town. I'll meet you there at my friends. He didn't say like, oh, I'll meet you at a particular place and then I'll escort you to the bar. He's like, just get there on your own and we'll meet you later. And don't worry, they have this water fight celebration going on.
mhm.
Don't worry, you'll be fine. Of course, they end up getting like attacked by this band of children with their water guns. I think we've all experienced this, by the way.
Oh my gosh, over the summer, we gave my son and a couple of his cousins water blasters. And I was sitting inside the house, and my older cousin was outside supervising them. And you just heard this chant of boys going, "Get her!" and the water spraying against the deck door. And I mean, it was only three of them and collectively, and it was intimidating.
My friends opened their pool just last year, and the first time they had people over, this boy who was there had no relationship with this other guest that was there. It was like an older gentleman. And every time he would talk, he would water soak him in the face while he was in a tangent conversation. And they literally told him to stop multiple times. And he would wait till the conversation started and he would shoot him in the face. And I was watching this play out and I was like, if that was an adult, he would have been knocked out.
That is so obnoxious and also so funny.
Exactly.
Hysterical.
It was quite a thing to try to negotiate.
They just turn into little gremlins when they have water blasters.
Apparently, yeah. Now, even the way they photographed the kids here in the show, by the way, you could see the evil rolling up in that girl's eyes. She's like, we're going to gang up on those American ladies.
I thought it was maybe going to be some kind of street urchin scam to steal their purses or
I
something.
thought the same thing. I thought they were exactly. I thought they were going to sneak up.
Yeah.
Like it was like one would distract them and the other ones would take their.
It was just the thrill of the chase.
Oh, you go to Europe, you'll have these kids will distract you, and it's just like keep your eyes on your purse, people.
Exactly.
What do you think about the whole setup here with those two other dudes showing up to hang out with the ladies?
I mean, they definitely seem like unsavory characters, right?
For sure.
So,
but they seem like a good time.
But they seem like fun, which, nothing wrong with that for a night, as long as you don't get in over your head.
Exactly. So we'll see how that all plays out. I mean, I guess that's what is going to be explored next week. How far do the girls take all this?
Yeah, especially considering two of them are married, although one's husband is MIA.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting.
Speaking of potential robbers, of course, we have Guy Talk. He has to have that conversation. I'm like, oh no, are they going to fire him this week? No, they gave him a gun. As you say, this is the arrival of the gun. I think the gun that will be used,
Mhm.
that we'll see in the finale.
They did not give him a course on gun safety.
No, not at all. I don't know if he's cut out for this job. He shouldn't be a bodyguard.
Yes.
I don't think he should do this job at all. He's weighing the gun, saying, "Oh man, do I really want to have a gun?" And then Mook shows up, looking beautiful, by the way.
Amazing outfit. Obviously, she's gorgeous anyway, but
Yes,
yeah.
right. But she's always in her uniform, so we kind of see her
Yes.
a little more dolled up here, obviously, for her performance that night, a dance performance, I believe, which we'll see next week. They're also supposed to go on a date tomorrow. So once again, I'm confused. Are we going to see that in the next episode or the next episode? Because next episode will be this continuing night, which I think was where we'll see her actually. As a matter of fact, I think we see a split second of it in the trailer as well. But of course, he gets his hands on this gun. He's worried about it. And the first thing he does is leave it out on his table. This guy's not cut out for this job. I'm sorry.
Mm-mm-mm.
Did you see the featurette, by the way, with the two of them together, the
I
actors?
didn't actually.
Guy Talk, the actor, has this really sweet Australian accent. I was like, oh, I didn't expect to hear that at all. So anyway, and of course, you had Lisa there, who speaks perfect English. I'm sure she's learned it over the course of her pop stardom. But you should check it out. They're very sweet, very cute together. And of course, as he's distracted and walking, they literally walk past each other. Timothy is coming out on his phone.
Mhm.
Finally, has unlocked his phone. It blows up with notifications. He talks to his lawyer, and boy, things are not looking good for Tim. As we kind of suspected already, he probably had way more financial problems than they hinted at earlier. This particular deal he had was much bigger part of his portfolio than he hinted at, because they're saying he's going to lose everything. He'll be lucky to not go
Mhm.
to jail. What did you think about how stressed out and strung out potentially Timothy is? And what do you think he plans to do with that gun, more importantly?
Well, I think his plan is to at least have the option to end his own life, which calls back to, is Kenny the character that was on the phone with
Yes.
him
Yeah.
that has now turned on him? But in the prior conversation, he says something to Kenny like, "I'm going to kill
I'm
you,"
going
and
to
he
kill you.
says, "You won't have to kill me. I'm going to kill myself."
Right.
So I think the seed of that was already planted. The thing is, according to the grim picture that's been painted in this episode, ending his own life is not going to fix anything for his family, because this sounds really bad about freezing assets and losing the house and all of that. I think, if anything, it will just add additional stress to the family situation. I'm not sure if he's really going to do it or not. I mean, maybe there's some insurance payout, there's that, but I don't think it will be enough insurance to dig them out of whatever hole he's dug them into.
Oh, I think when you hear a little bit about his biography there, that he lived under the shadow of his dad, who was this
Governor.
supposedly,
Oh
and
no,
his
grandfather was governor.
right. And then his dad was just a
Yeah.
really successful businessman. I think he says like really,
Mhm.
really, or something like that. I feel like he just has this legacy he has to live up to. And maybe this is the performance we see in Saxon, which I think adds some shading there, which I thought was interesting this week. They finally do some character development there with the family beyond the caricature that they've been up until this point. I don't think he's like, oh, this will fix the problem for my family. I don't think he wants to deal with the repercussions of it, right? Like theoretically, you would think you want to still be around to help them rebuild and to do interviews and do what you need to do to protect your family from getting all this blowback. Killing yourself is going to put them in even more
Right.
in the focus of all this tsunami that's coming to hit them, right? I don't see that as any kind of a courageous thing that he's going to somehow
But
bail
do
them
you
out.
think that's what he's thinking?
I actually think we're supposed to read it two possible ways. There is, and I also think that this parallels as well with Rick's story later. There's one version of it where he is going to literally say, "I'm going to kill Kenny." So, I mean, I think that might still be on the agenda, and he needs a gun if he's going to go seek revenge.
Yeah,
Uh,
but he's not going to be able to. What's he going to do? Check the gun and then get, I mean, I don't
yeah,
know.
get on the plane. And yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. But I mean, it's unlikely. But I think he did explicitly say, "I'm going to kill you." And but then, of course, there's also the potential easy way out, and maybe that's what he's doing with the pills as well. It's not only as a way to momentarily not deal with the situation. That if he thinks he takes a bunch of them, maybe he takes a whole bottle of them, which he stole from his wife in this episode, maybe that's another potential way out.
Also, he's overestimating federal prison. I mean,
Right. Mhm.
for a few months, it's not that bad, man.
Yeah, you saw the
Freezing the
Wolf of Wall
assets, that's
Street.
more serious, but
So you saw
yeah,
the Wolf of Wall Street, right? He goes,
right.
does a little resort time, and now he's a
It's like
millionaire again.
Seamus.
He's just going
Yeah.
around doing speeches, and he's probably richer than he was before. It's not so bad, buddy. Watch the Wolf of Wall Street. You'll be all right. Not that I, would sign off on any of that behavior. But yeah. So speaking of some paralleling there with the story that Tim tells about his father and living under a shadow and the additional stress he has about that, let's jump over to Rick and Chelsea for a bit. This is very funny dialogue early on, although this gets very serious as well. But I love when she says, Rick, I don't like this. I don't want you going out to Bangkok. Bad things happen in threes. This is some Final Destination shit. We have a new Final Destination movie coming out in May, by the way. So check, something to look forward to.
How many are they up to? My
My God.
gosh.
I don't even know how many at least they've done at least 6 or 7. When she keeps pushing him, he eventually does explain himself. And it's a lot of what we suspected. This guy, according to his mom anyway, killed his father. He wants revenge, if not closure of some other kind. And he tells her maybe it won't be violent. Like, she's worried, as we probably all are, that this could be physical revenge. But he also says, I just want to look him in the eyes and I want to hear what he has to say. How did you feel about this dynamic?
This showed he really, I don't think this is new. I think we had gathered this before.
Yeah.
That he really cares about her because,
Yes.
She drags him to the back of the boat and puts him on the spot. And he tries a little bit to get out of having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But when he sees how important it is to her, he does come clean with it. And I think that shows that he really cares about her and cares about having her trust and cares about her enough to want to share this because it's important to her to know what's going on. I liked what it says about their relationship. As far as this plan itself, it doesn't seem like a good one, but
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
What do you think about how vague that is, that he says, I don't really know how he died. I don't really know how that happened. I just know that this guy ruined his life. I don't know. I'm getting Darth Vader vibes here. Earlier on, I said, is this the guy who killed his dad? Or is this potentially maybe his dad? And I'm thinking, well, maybe the mom said, well, that guy killed your dad in the same way that Darth Vader killed Anakin Skywalker. He replaced them to some extent. So I don't know. I'm getting Darth Vader vibes is all I'm trying to say. That sounds like some Darth Vader shit. Paraphrase, Chelsea.
Well, if I knew more about Star Wars, I might understand
you
that
might have
reference.
an opinion. Yes. I was really touched, by the way, with the interactions between Rick and Amrita, and she wanted to see him one more time. And he's like, well, I'm leaving for Bangkok, so I won't be able to make it. And I thought this was really sweet, where he says, you touched me and I have hope for you. Find peace in this life. She says, you can let go of your story. And by the way, Walton Goggins, I think in the first few episodes, he's very one note in his performance, but he's one of my favorite character actors. Mm-hmm. You really see this in his face, just him receiving this shows you that there is a real soulfulness under all of that hard exterior for him.
Yes.
And I also wonder about maybe the show is intentionally, you have this Indian woman telling him these things, and these are kind of platitudes that you want to hear. But I thought made me actually think, as I'm watching this, that sometimes being in the right context and being in the right environment and just at the right time in your life, hearing a platitude is kind of what you need to hear at that time, right?
It happens. It definitely happens. There are certain conversations I can recall that seemed like random one-off conversations with someone from 20 years ago, ended up being more meaningful in my life.
And even though I think that the show is repeatedly, this whole project of these White Lotus seasons repeatedly seem to be making satire out of the fact that you are on this vacation, escaping from your worries or rediscovering your true purpose in life, and how that never happens, or 90% of the time does not happen, even in the stories that we watch on this show. I do think that this moment is what these trips are supposed to be about, putting you in a completely different context, having a completely different experience, and then receiving some important information that you may not accept in your day-to-day life, basically. All right, so let's get to the boat. We got to talk about the boat. I like Saxon shows up with the family. Greg knows exactly what's going on between him and the flirtation that's already existing. And he's just kind of like, gives him the handshake. But then he loves the idea of grabbing a drink with Timothy. And then let's talk about, I really liked the dynamic between Saxon and Lachlan.
Oh, with
And
the magic and stuff too. That was
yes.
fantastic.
And for the first time, I felt like these are brothers, right? Because you see
Agree.
the obnoxious Saxon character who's been like so annoying up until this point, always pushing his brother and just so one note. But then when you see this dynamic where he knows Lachlan has this kind of nerdy charm and he's going to let the brother completely guilelessly just being like, hey, do your magic tricks. And he's actually good at it. And everyone's actually impressed. And he gets to be kind of his wingman, not his wingman, but his hype man in a way. And gets to be the obnoxious character. And it makes him more endearing in a way. So I think that this is very pragmatic in the dynamic of this is how they're going to, the two of them together. He's going to like use Lachlan to seduce these girls. But it does show a real brotherly dynamic between the two of them, which I really, really liked.
And I like that Lachlan is an excellent magician.
He's really good. He's actually good at it. It's what he does. There's some David Blaine shit going on.
Yeah. Very entertaining.
The Ratliffs in general here, I liked a lot better. I love Victoria trying to hide her purse under that pillow because she thinks someone's going to try to steal her purse on the yacht.
You know what? I would do the exact same thing. I would find some out of the way corner and
tuck it away.
Be like, yeah, I'm just going to tuck this away right here. Yeah.
She already called out the kids earlier for trying to steal her. What is she on? Lorazepam. Now she sees the whole bottle is gone. Who do you think is taking this? Is she so clueless that who's the only human being who could have done this at this moment?
Who's the person that you gave a lorazepam to yourself,
I know,
lady?
exactly. She cannot see what's right in front of her face. Maybe that says something as well.
And also, I don't think he's like going easy on these. You'd think she would notice something was a little bit off about her husband as well.
Is this a low dosage though? Because she had to bring a whole entire bottle for her 1 week trip. Like how much lorazepam does she need?
The way he's popping them, it's a miracle he's still awake.
Exactly.
But then also, what kind of like level of zonked out is she at baseline that she's bringing the bottle with her?
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
how much of this does she need?
Yeah. This feels like, I don't know too much about lorazepam, but it feels like a once a day kind of dose.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah.
It's for anxiety, right?
I think anxiety, and people use it to help them sleep, I think, which is, related kind of.
Well, you don't need a bottle on the yacht if you're going to try to fall.
Right, exactly. It feels like maybe you take one before you go, and that should tide you over. Yeah.
Yeah, and Piper does call her out on that. Like, exactly how much of this do you need for 1 week?
At a wellness retreat.
Exactly, right? Like, do a little yoga or do a little meditation, for God's sakes, or get a massage, something else.
Yeah.
Anything else. I did like, haven't really connected to the Piper character here, but I did actually have a little bit of an emotional connection when the dad is speaking to her and, not wanting to disappoint her. And I especially like when they just touch heads. That is like me and my daughter when we, if I had a fight with her about she's being irrational about something, later on I'll be like washing the dishes and she'll be on her iPad or something, and I'll kind of sit down next to her and look at what she's watching, and we'll just like kind of touch heads. And it's our little peace offering to each other.
That's so sweet.
I was thinking about her when she's older and like us still having that little gesture.
I love that.
Oh, and one more thing I want to talk about the boat. First of all, how everyone is so turned off by Tim because he's like completely out of his mind on drugs and just incredibly cynical at this point. I just love all the other people on the boat. These older dudes who are all scheming in some way, trying to like sell their services. Some of these guys are maybe legitimately rich con men. Some of these are just straight up con men who are pretending to be rich, all with like 20-year-old Thai women on their arms. I just love the way this scene that they drew here. And I like how Tim knows exactly what they're about and could care less about turning them off. And Rick, those are the type of people that Rick hangs out with all the
Mhm.
time. And he's just like, just give me your card. If I need your service, I'll talk to you. Don't talk to me again for the rest of the day. He makes no bones about it. He thinks of no.
It seemed to me like just a few people would be on this boat, and then it became clear that there were
That's
more
so
people
many.
that were going to be on the boat. And now it seems like it was a full house on the boat. I mean, I don't even know where they found all these people to invite. I found it funny how both Rick and Tim
Tim.
are both in their own worlds of
Mhm.
stress and resentment and could care less about anything going on around them.
I also feel like Gary, well, maybe because Gary is still pretty much a con man. These are the only people he can have around him.
I
Because
guess,
I
yeah.
would feel like he doesn't want to have these people around him either, right? Like, so because there's one version of this where it's just Chloe inviting whoever random people from the resort onto the yacht. These guys are a certain type of person. And maybe it is the girls bonding with each other because they're all in the same circumstance of dating these sugar daddies. So
Right.
maybe that's where maybe that's where it came from. And maybe Greg could care less because it seems like Greg is just like, let's go upstairs and get a drink. I have no interest in hanging out with the rest of these people.
Right.
And this, of course, sets up next week. We said this about last week. I think next week is going to be a very eventful episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a long night out. The Ratliff boys are out without phones, out in the who knows where. Hopefully, nothing happens to separate them one from the other. The girls are out all night with these Russian dudes that could be trouble for sure, or they could just have a good time. I guess it all remains to be seen as well. And then we'll see Guy Talk will be hanging out with Mook, and we'll see how that relationship continues. But Greg, this worries me a little bit. Greg has some business back at the resort, and I think that business is Belinda, who's doing her own investigation here.
Mm-hmm.
I like her reaction to reading up on all these things and finding Greg's identity, and
Mm-hmm.
but she's just like shocked or offended that the guy lied to her face. But she should know he's probably a dangerous guy just based on the headlines she's reading.
For sure.
Although I don't think he's going to kill her next week because she does survive to the end, right? We do see Zion is in the
True.
very
Fair
first
point.
episode looking for his mom, who's supposed to be on that trip. Could mean that Greg is planning some kind of trap for her. This is day 3 of the show, correct?
First, yeah, complete day 3. The first day was the day of arrival.
Piper says to her mom, how much lorazepam do you need? You've only been here for 3 days.
Right.
So I guess it's 3 full days at this point. Yeah. And this day 3 will continue into next week. And then we still have 4 more episodes beyond that. So, or 3 more episodes beyond. So yeah, very curious to see next week's episode. Maybe the plot is going to start picking up here. I like the character stuff. Once again, I think I'm about where I was with season 1, not as engaged as with season 2 for sure. Although this seems to have a lot more plot than season 1 does.
Yeah, right now I like this better than season 1. Season 2 was fantastic. I'm not quite at that level with it, but I do like it better than season 1.
And it has more plot than either one of those seasons for sure. I mean, the real plot,
Yeah.
any kind of real plot other than character stuff on season 2 happened in the last 2 episodes.
Right,
So
right.
I honestly, like season 2 for me was just a vibe. It was way less about the plot of the show. Anyway.
Fair, yes.
Whereas this one, it's less of a vibe. So they need to give me some plot. And there's a lot of plot here. A lot, actually. Every one of these characters has plot going on. Who's the thief? What is the actual agenda with Rick, for example, right? So there's all these mysteries that need to be solved by the end of the season, way more so than in previous seasons, but simultaneously less interested in the individual characters.
Yeah, I understand your point there. I think that's valid.
So once again, anybody out there, if you haven't signed up for, or I should say subscribed to our YouTube channel, give us a subscription and shout it out. And maybe that'll be the first video episode. I will read out those comments.
I love the idea.
Just to have a very short and easy to edit video episode just to wet our toes, because video editing is more time consuming than audio editing for sure. All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening. And thank you, Sona, for co-hosting with me.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.